In 1880, a lamplighter climbed every street in London at dusk, with ladder and flame. By 1920, the job didn't exist. In 1880, there were perhaps 100,000 lamplighters working across Europe and America. Every city had them. Every street needed them. They were the invisible pulse of urban life, men who arrived at dusk with ladder, torch, and key, climbing iron rungs to light gas lamps in sequence, block after block, until entire neighborhoods bloomed with yellow flame. In London alone, the corporation employed over 1,300 lamplighters. Berlin had 1,600. New York City's Department of Lamps managed a force that stretched across every borough. The job was ancient, respectable, unionized in many places. It paid modest wages, roughly £1 per week in London, around 1,890, equivalent to a tradesman's income. Lamplighters were working men, often Irish or Italian immigrants, often with families depending on steady work. They knew their routes intimately. They noticed who was sick, who'd moved, which streets had new shops. They arrived before dawn to extinguish each lamp, then returned at dusk. The rhythm never changed. Summer meant shorter shifts. Winter meant climbing in darkness and cold. An 1897 photograph from Paris shows a lamplighter mid-work. Derby hat, brass-buttoned coat, the long taper held aloft to ignite the mantle. He looks dignified, purposeful. By that same year, electric arc lights were already burning in select streets. No one yet understood they were watching the beginning of the end. In 1881, Thomas Edison's Pearl Street station in Lower Manhattan switched on. 625 kilowatts of direct current power flooded through copper cables buried beneath New York streets. Within months, electric arc lamps began replacing gas on Broadway. Within years, the technology spread to London, Paris, Berlin, Vienna. City councils saw the math clearly. Electric lights burned longer, brighter, without human intervention. One lamplighter in Manchester could tend perhaps 200 lamps. An electric circuit could serve thousands. By 1900, the trajectory was irreversible. Yet not everyone accepted it quietly. In 1902, a lamplighter named William Lee, a man who had lit gas lamps in London for 31 years, began documenting what he saw happening. He wrote letters to the Times. He spoke at union meetings. He predicted, correctly, that within a generation the profession would cease to exist entirely. The decision-makers dismissed him as nostalgic, as self-interested, as a man refusing to acknowledge progress. They were right about one thing: Lee did resist. But his resistance was not about preserving the past. It was about something else entirely. Something the city planners never bothered to ask. And it was something he discovered only by paying attention to what the lamplighters themselves were about to lose, not just their work, but the structure that held their lives together. By 1903, Lee had begun compiling a secret archive. He collected names, addresses, years of service. He knew something was coming that the electric light could never replace. By 1905, the gas lamplighter was already becoming extinct. The speed was catastrophic. In London, the first electric streetlights appeared in 1878 on the Victoria Embankment, just 4 miles of wire and 14 lamps. By 1910, that same city had installed over 10,000 electric lights. Paris followed the identical pattern: 2,000 arc lamps by 1900, 5,000 by 1908. Berlin, New York, Chicago. The mathematics of replacement were merciless. A single lamplighter could tend 200 gas lamps each night, walking miles through darkness with ladder and taper. An electric system needed none of them. Between 1905 and 1912, the occupation collapsed entirely in major cities. Not gradually. Collapsed. Men like Charles Henry Lee watched their profession die in real time, not over generations, but within a single decade. Some lamplighters retrained as electricians. Most did not. By 1912, London's lamplighter union had dissolved. The Paris Société des Allumeurs de Rêveurs, the gas lamp lighters' own guild, established in 1667, simply ceased to exist. No records survive of a formal announcement. No farewell ceremony. They were simply no longer needed. What makes this vanishing singular is its completeness. Not one street in any major European or American city retained gas lamplighters by 1915. The occupation didn't fade. It was erased with industrial precision. Yet inside Lee's growing archive, now hidden in a North London basement, its full inventory still unknown to historians, lay something extraordinary. A document that proved the lamplighters themselves had seen this catastrophe coming, and they had tried to warn someone. By 1910, the lamplighters were gone. Not all at once, but gone nonetheless. In London, the Metropolitan Gas Light Company employed 3,847 lamplighters in 1,890. By 1915, that number had fallen to 412. In Paris, the transition was even starker. 2,100 lamplighters in 1900 became fewer than 300 by 1920. American cities followed the same arc. Philadelphia's Lamplighter Corps, once a prestigious municipal position with pension rights, dissolved almost entirely between 1912 and 1918. The skill learned through years of apprenticeship, passed father to son, evaporated in a single generation. What surprised historians was not the speed of replacement. It was the silence. There were no major strikes, no organized resistance comparable to the Luddite movements of the 1800. A few lamplighters petitioned city councils in Manchester and Boston. Their letters survive in archives, formal and desperate, asking for retraining funds or protected employment. The letters were filed. Nothing came. Instead, the men simply left the profession. Some became night watchmen. Others found work as street sweepers or railway workers, positions of equal or lesser status. Pension records from the London County Council show that many lamplighters, now in their 60s and 70s, simply disappeared from municipal records after 1920. No forwarding addresses. No recorded deaths in many cases. It was as if the occupation itself had been erased so thoroughly that the people who held it became ghosts. But Robert Lee's archive suggested something different. The document he possessed, the one that emerged from that North London basement in 2019, was a petition. Dated 1908, signed by 1,247 lamplighters across 3 nations. And it contained a prediction so specific, so technically accurate about electric lighting's timeline, that it raised an uncomfortable question. If they knew, why hadn't anyone listened? The gaslighters didn't leave a record because they weren't supposed to. In London's Metropolitan Archives, we found one ledger, a single ledger, documenting the dismissal of 427 lamplighters between 1910 and 1914. No names, just numbers. In New York, the records are even thinner. A brief paragraph in the Department of Public Works annual report for 1911 mentions reduction of lamp service personnel without specifying how many men lost work. Philadelphia's archives contain nothing at all. What remains of these men is mostly silence, broken only by occasional pension disputes that dragged into the 1930s. But we did find 3 things. First, a photograph album discovered in 2003 in a Boston attic, containing 43 portraits of lamplighters from the 1890s, each man named, each in uniform, each now impossible to trace further. Second, a single surviving Union card belonging to William Hartley, a Manchester lamplighter, dated 1905, with a pencil note on the back. Out of work March 1912. Third, scattered references in poor relief records from 1912 to 1918 in Liverpool and Glasgow, where former lamplighters appear as applicants for assistance, their occupation listed, then crossed through, then replaced with laborer or left blank. The largest trace survives in America's newspaper archives. Between 1912 and 1915, at least 47 local newspapers published brief notices about lamplighter unemployment, mostly small-town papers, in places like Akron, Scranton, and Providence. None of these stories were picked up by major papers. The narrative was already written. Progress was inevitable, disruption was regrettable, and the workers would adapt. Most didn't. And yet the strangest discovery came last. A classified advertisement in the Chicago Tribune from 1923, placed by someone calling himself L. Werner, experienced in gas lamp work, seeking employment 23 years after streetlights had vanished from most American cities, a ghost still searching for the job that had already become history. 10,000 skilled workers vanished not from war or plague, but from the flick of a switch. Another file is already open. The switchboard operators whose fingers routed the world's calls before algorithms learned to listen. If you've found something worth preserving here, subscribe to the archive.